Sony's rolling. GoPro's rolling.
Alright, Yosemite Climbing Association, Ascent to the Nose, take 1.
Here we go. And
Hi, my name is Ken Yeager. I'm president of the Yosemite Climbing Association, and in this room here is the earliest part of our collection. We start in 1875 with a spike here from the first ascent of Half Dome when it was done by George Anderson. Most people know it as the cable route on Half Dome. He hand drilled holes in the rock and put these iron spikes in the rock, tied himself to these spikes, stood on them, and drilled another hole above his head. So approximately every 7 to 8 feet he drilled a hole in the rock to get his way to the top. After that, most people just scrambled around Yosemite. There was no rope work. Nobody knew rope techniques until 1932 when Robert Underhill demonstrated those rope climbing techniques that he learned in Europe to the California climbers, in particular Richard Leonard, Jules Eichhorn from the Sierra Club, the rock climbing section of the Sierra Club. Those guys practiced those techniques by jumping off of rocks in Berkeley Hills. They're lucky somebody didn't at least break their legs or femurs or worse. And after practicing those, they took these techniques to Yosemite Valley and tried them for the first time in 1933 on Labor Day weekend. We have the roster to that and all the climbers that participated in it, and that was the real start of modern climbing in Yosemite Valley. We have the notebooks, Higher and Lower Cathedral notebooks from those days. Both of those took 3 times each before they made the summit. And when they first started climbing there, they didn't have proper pitons, so they used these 10-inch hardware nails. As you can see, they bent on them, and they realized pretty early on that they needed to save some money and order real carabiners and real pitons from Sporthaus Schuster in Munich, Germany. And then we have some experimental pitons that the Sierra Club played around with, but once again, they found that the commercial stuff available in Germany was much better. And then if you look over here, we got some notebooks or pages out of the notebook with original photographs on Lower Cathedral Spire. And then we have the first notebook, which was printed, and first guidebook, which was printed in 1937 by the Sierra Club. And there were, I believe, only 100 copies made. And so it's a very rare book. And then we have some older steel carabiners. This one was from Fritz Lippmann, who was involved in the actual first ascent of Lost Arrow Spire, which they did, I believe, in 1946. The route had been started by John Salathe, who is the grandfather of big wall climbing or modern climbing, which means spending multiple nights on the wall. So those people that are spending days on El Capitan can thank those techniques and attribute them to John Salathe. I have quite a bit of John's Salathe gear here on display, including pitons that he made. He was a blacksmith, and he made the first hard steel piton. And what made those so special was that you could take them out of the rock and they would hold their shape, and you could use them multiple times on a climb, whereas the soft iron pitons from Munich, Germany were good for about 1 use on Yosemite granite, maybe 2 at the most, and then they were destroyed. So this enabled Salathe to spend multiple days on a climb. He'd only have to bring maybe 16, 20 pitons and not hundreds of them, because he could place each one multiple times. We have some of the original photographs from him, and we have his hammer and a rope, which is right over here. And these techniques that he developed enabled people to climb El Capitan at some point. That didn't happen, the nose route, until 1958, and the story of that's kind of interesting. The prize at that moment was the northwest face of Half Dome, of which Warren Harding had attempted once before with Royal Robbins. Royal Robbins had attempted it twice before. Warren Harding put a group of climbers together. They came to the valley and they noticed that Royal was already up there and gonna make the summit, so they were very disappointed. Warren, being the good sport that he is, brought some sandwiches and water up there and congratulated them when they got on top. That first climb was considered Yosemite's first grade 6, which just means multiple days on the wall, even though John Saladay had already done it. It was just so much longer than anything else that had been done at the time. It's a full 2,000 feet of climbing and very technical climbing. Warren Harding and Mark Powell and Bill Dolt-Fuhrer, which were the three that were going to attempt Half Dome, being disappointed, decided to grab a bunch of jugs of red wine and sit in El Cap Meadow and figure out a way and a route to climb El Capitan. They decided on this, right up the center of the face, the nose route, which is 3,300 feet in length, or if you're a European, 1,000 meters. And they chose this route not only because of its boldness, its length, and right in the center of the face, but also because of all the big ledges that are kind of sprinkled throughout the route all the way up. These ledges enabled them to stockpile them with provisions, so they would fix climbing rope to their high point, rappel back down, get provisions and water, food, and whatever else they needed, and they would prusik or climb the ropes back up to their high point and establish these camps on these ledges. We actually have the spool of hemp rope that they used at the beginning, and I'm going to grab it here. It's a little bit heavy. I'll bring it to you. And this is the spool of hemp rope that they used initially on the nose of El Capitan. So this was in 1957, and they used this for about 3 or 4 months until they, that fall in 1957, they went back up the ropes, and Warren had already gone up there, and Wally Reed was coming behind him. He was a little bigger than Warren, and he kind of gave it a yank, and it broke on him, and he slid back down to the ledge. And so after that, they decided that it's prudent to use nylon rope, even though it's a lot more expensive. So they switched everything out to nylon ropes. Warren got a little bit of flack for the way he did the climb. In other words, he was using Himalayan, what they called siege tactics, which means establishing camps on up the wall instead of just committing and doing the whole climb in one. But nobody else at that time could see anybody doing it any other way. So the nose eventually got climbed on November 12th, 1958, after 47 days of work, distributed over approximately a 1.5 year period. They had started it the summer before. The problem was, when they were on the wall, all the tourists were stopping to watch them climb, and they just left their cars in the middle of the road, and pretty soon emergency vehicles couldn't get in or out, or nobody could leave. And so the Park Service asked Warren and gang to not climb during the busy summer tourist season, and so they were required to wait until after Labor Day to start working on it again. And so on November 12th, after 12 days on the wall, they did top out in 1958. And a few years back, we had a 50-year reunion anniversary of 6 of the people that were involved in the first ascent of the 9 people. So 3 of them had passed, including Warren. And Leroy Radonovich, a local politician from Mariposa, actually wrote up a resolution that Congress voted on, and I have a copy of that here. And that recognizes the climb that they did.
You can cut there, Ken.
Cut? Okay.
Yeah.
Are we cutting?
Well, it seems like a good place to end it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can